Okay, let's try and unpack this. The 20th century,
Mm-hmm.
the global population quadrupled,
Yeah, 4 times bigger.
which is already a huge increase.
Yep.
But then, get this, the world's economic output, it multiplied by 40.
40 times. It's almost hard to grasp that scale of change.
Right. So the big question we're diving into, the thing that really grabs you, is this massive shift, this boom driven by more global connection.
Yeah.
Was it, ultimately a good thing, or did all that growth hide some serious costs?
That's exactly it, because that growth, that incredible expansion, it wasn't spread evenly at all.
And that inequality is really central to understanding the reactions, isn't it?
Hmm.
Who won, who lost out, and, well, why it kicked off so much pushback.
Precisely. After 1900, you see this intensification of globalization, not just money and trade, but culture, too.
Hmm.
Just deeper connections, more interaction across borders than ever before.
Yeah, exactly. And for this deep dive, we've looked at some really interesting material analyzing how different places, different nations reacted to this wave of globalization.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission, if you like, is to get a handle on those varied responses. Where did the friction happen?
Yeah.
Where did these big global forces meet local realities? And, well, things didn't go smoothly.
We're aiming for those moments that make you go, ah, okay, now I see why that happened.
Exactly, those aha moments.
And, to really get why people resisted, we need a bit of background first.
Oh.
We have to talk about the economic setup after World War II.
Right, the post-war order.
That whole framework is kind of the stage in which a lot of this resistance plays out.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1944, World War II is winding down, and the big economic players, they get together in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And their goal, basically, is to stop the kind of economic chaos that happened after World War I.
Yeah.
Right? The instability that, well, many think helped cause the Second War.
They were trying to build something more stable, more prosperous, ideally, incredibly ambitious, really. Trying to design a whole post-war economic system. And out of this meeting came 2 really crucial institutions. We still talk about them all the time. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The IMF.
The big 2.
They were the pillars, really, of what we called the Bretton Woods system, this whole architecture for managing the global economy.
So the World Bank, its first job, as I understand it, was just the massive task of rebuilding Europe after all the destruction.
That's right. That was the initial focus. But its role changed over time.
How so?
Well, it started shifting its attention more towards developing countries, giving out loans, technical help. The stated goals being things like reducing poverty, kickstarting economic development, sustainable growth.
Yeah. And the IMF, its role was a bit different, more about the plumbing of the financial system.
You could put it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
IMF was mainly about making sure the global financial system ran smoothly, helping countries' currencies work together predictably. Monetary cooperation, that was the term.
Right.
Initially, the idea was to keep currency values stable, often linked to the U.S. dollar.
And the overall goal for both.
Promote free trade. Keep money flowing freely across borders. That became the standard playbook, the accepted way of doing things in the post-war decades.
And this system, our sources definitely show it played a big part in that huge economic growth we mentioned at the start.
Absolutely. It facilitated a massive expansion of global trade and investment.
But, and this is the crucial but, isn't it? That growth, it wasn't felt everywhere equally, not by a long shot.
No. And that's the core of the criticism that emerged. Many argued that this whole Bretton Woods setup, the bank, the IMF, and later the World Trade Organization, the WTO, often ended up disadvantaging countries in the global south.
For whose benefit?
Well, the argument is for the benefit of the already developed nations in the global north.
It sounds depressingly familiar, actually, like echoes of older power dynamics.
It does. One source we looked at explicitly draws a line back to imperialism, where powerful countries basically used colonies for their own economic gain.
So the criticism is that this was kind of a new version of that, a neocolonialism almost.
That's the argument, that these global economic rules made it easier, for example, for big multinational corporations to go into developing countries and take advantage of, say, lower wages or weaker environmental rules.
Exploitation, basically.
Critics definitely saw the potential for exploitation baked into the system, yes.
And it wasn't just about, factories and cheap labor, was it? There was also this idea that global rules could just steamroll local decisions.
Exactly. That's another key point. The worry was that international economic policies pushed by these institutions could undermine a country's ability or even a local community's ability to make its own economic choices based on its own needs.
So local priorities might get sidelined for the sake of the global market.
Right. And it's out of all these concerns, inequality, exploitation, loss of local control, that you see this significant anti-globalization movement really start to build momentum.
Right. Which then burst onto the world stage very, very visibly in 1999, the Battle for Seattle. Can you sort of paint a picture of that for us?
Sure. So the WTO, the World Trade Organization, they're having this big meeting in Seattle, planning their financial goals for the new millennium.
Yeah.
Probably expected business as usual.
But they got something very different.
Completely different. They were met by this enormous protest. We're talking over 40,000 people. And crucially, from all sorts of different backgrounds.
My goodness.
You had labor unions marching alongside environmental activists, human rights groups shoulder to shoulder with student organizations. It was this incredible mix.
That's really significant, isn't it? That diverse coalition.
Hugely significant. It showed how different kinds of anxieties about globalization could all come together. People worried about jobs, about the environment, about corporate power. They found common cause there.
What were some examples of those alliances? Like who was working together that might seem surprising?
Well, the sources point to, for instance, labor groups concerned about sweatshops, working directly with environmentalists, worried about deforestation caused by, say, trade deals. They saw the same system hurting both people and the planet.
Wow. And the response, it wasn't exactly peaceful, was it?
No, the police response was quite heavy-handed. Tear gas, rubber bullets. It got pretty intense. But Seattle really marked a turning point. It put the anti-globalization movement, representing those who felt left out or harmed by the system, squarely on the map.
Okay, so that's a powerful example of resistance to the economic side of globalization.
Right. But like you said earlier, globalization isn't just about money.
No, there's this whole other dimension, the cultural side. And that's faced pushback too.
Absolutely. And you could argue that in recent decades, the spread of culture has been turbocharged by, well, social media, Facebook, Twitter, platforms like that.
They just leap across borders instantly, don't they?
They do, connecting people, spreading ideas, trends, cultural products faster and wider than ever before.
Which sounds great, mostly. More connection, maybe more understanding between cultures.
It definitely has that potential, but not everyone sees it that way. Some governments, some states have viewed this flood of globalized culture, often, let's be honest, Western culture, as a kind of unwelcome invasion.
An intrusion.
Yeah. And they've actively pushed back against it.
And China's a really clear example here, isn't it? With how they've handled Western social media.
A textbook example, really. China took the pretty drastic step of blocking access to platforms like Facebook and Twitter inside the country.
And their reason. What was the official line?
Well, according to the sources we reviewed, the stated rationale was that these platforms were being used to stir up trouble, basically, to create instability.
They pointed to the Uyghur riots in 2009 specifically, didn't they?
Yeah.
Can you give us just a little context on that?
Sure. The 2009 riots were a major outbreak of violence, primarily in Xinjiang, between the Han Chinese majority and the Uyghur minority. The Uyghurs are a mostly Muslim group with a long history in the region, and there's a very complex and often tense relationship with documented grievances and allegations of serious human rights abuses by the state.
A really fraught situation.
Very. And the government's position after the riots was that Western social media had played a significant role in fanning the flames, in spreading information that led to the violence.
Was that view widely accepted? Or did the sources suggest other factors were maybe more important?
The official government narrative definitely highlighted social media's role, but the sources we looked at also stressed that deep-seated ethnic tensions, economic issues, and those historical grievances were obviously huge underlying factors. It's complex.
But the government blamed the platforms.
They did. They blamed Facebook and Twitter for spreading ideas that they felt caused the uprising, and that became the justification for blocking them.
Okay, but people still want to be online, right? They still want to connect. China couldn't just ignore that.
No, exactly. They understood the demand was there. So what do? They facilitated the growth of their own major social media platform, Weibo.
Which does similar things to Twitter or Facebook.
Pretty much, yeah. You can post updates, follow people, share things. All the basic functions are there.
But.
Yeah.
There's always a but, isn't there?
There's a very significant but. Weibo operates under intense government scrutiny and censorship. So, yes, people can use social media, but the government maintains tight control over the content. Anything considered unfit, any Western ideas they want to keep out, criticisms of the party,
Mm.
that can all be filtered, deleted, controlled.
So it's like allowing the form, but controlling the substance.
Precisely. It's a very clear example of a state pushing back hard against the free flow of globalized culture, trying to shape its own controlled digital space. A strategy, by the way, that other countries are definitely watching.
Okay, so we've looked at these two big streams of resistance. On the one hand, economic pushback driven by worries about inequality, exploitation, fairness.
Rooted in the Bretton Woods system and its consequences.
And on the other hand, cultural pushback often about preserving local identity or maintaining social control, like in the China example.
Yeah, resisting what's seen as unwelcome outside influence, especially via technology, it really shows the complexity.
It does. It highlights this fundamental tension in globalization, doesn't it? I mean, yes, it generated huge wealth, connected the world in incredible ways,
Undeniably.
but it also raised really legitimate questions about who actually benefits, who gets left behind, and whether local cultures and autonomy get weakened in the process.
Those tensions are still very much with us.
So for you listening, the real takeaway here, the so what, is that these stories of resistance in the past century, they're not just history.
Not at all.
They actually give us vital context for understanding so many arguments happening right now. You know, debates about trade deals, about the power of big tech companies, about cultural influence. It all connects back.
It really helps you see the roots of current anxieties about global interconnectedness versus local control, finding that balance.
That's the tricky part, isn't it?
It is, and maybe that leaves us with a big question to think about. As the world gets seemingly smaller and more connected every day, how do we actually get the best out of globalization? How do we maximize those benefits?
While also taking seriously and actually addressing the very real concerns about fairness, inequality, and local identity that have been fueling this resistance for, well, over 100 years now.
That's the challenge, a huge one, and definitely something worth mulling over.